the way we define ourselves against an other. And I'm wondering about what current fears, anxieties, others do we represent in our monsters? What are some of those things that you're seeing taking place in monster fiction? And what are the ways that we're defining ourselves against something or showing our fears through the monsters we create? Especially through the recent incarnations of monsters of the past.
Well, I think there's always a bit of a delay. I know a reviewer of my book said, John's brilliantly created a timeless atmosphere. These teenagers don't have cell phones and they don't play video games, and he really smartly gave a timeless feeling to the book. But it was just when I was a kid, we didn't have cell phones or video games, so I didn't even think to put that into the story.
I had the same thing too, and I realized I should probably be putting more cell phones into my stories, so people of this age can relate to it.
But so I think sometimes the art that you see being produced, like we were just talking about, the monsters I'm creating are in response to the bullies or whoever I faced in the mid-90s. I mean, I think one of the big topics I address is family breakdown in terms of parental divorce and the difficulties of step-parents. And I think that's certainly an issue of my generation, where my parents were of this generation. We're like, hey, let's all get divorced. It's great. There's no consequences. And then it completely ruined my life. And so now, 20 years after that, I'm writing stories about divorce and the impact it has on children. So I don't know if art does immediately respond to the current issues in terms of the others or in terms of fears. I think there's at least, maybe in literature because it takes longer, I think sometimes there's a lag in terms of decades.
I think also these issues stay current because lasting change is extremely hard to bring, as we were discussing before, and it's much easier to just kind of chalk it off to kids are crazy. And these issues are issues that I faced in the 80s that were present in the 90s and in the 2000s and are present now, and people are still talking about bullying in schools and blah, 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 blah. Right now it's more visible because it's happening on social media and other people can see it happen. But it's still there, and it's still kids being kids.
It will always be there. Media celebrates bullies. I never watched the show, but I heard of this Gossip Girl. And it's like this little teen fashion show, and how to act. And when my daughter was growing up, she's still growing up, of course, but when she was in school, she was in grade school going into high school, and when this show came on, all these kids just gravitated to the cliques, right? And these cliques, she was telling me, all they would do is just be catty and nasty and everyone else, because they decided that they were going to be the upper crust of the school. So it's a vicious circle for bullying. It's never going to end. There's nothing you can do about it. I read an article, or something, somebody regarding bullying in the States, where they celebrate. It is part of their culture. They don't want the weak kid to survive. They want the strong to survive. And part of that is bullying. And for the weak to stand up to bullying. And even though the young, we grow up and survive, not everyone survives. It's the tragic endings that get all the attention, of course. And it's a vicious circle in the sense that even our kids end up being bullied. And all you can say to them is, it's going to get better, especially in grade school. So get to high school, once you're in college, it's in a different world and stuff. And because you can go to the teachers and they really don't care. Mm-hmm. They don't want to get involved. It's the potential for lawsuits and stuff if you're right, if you're wrong, because of a bully, whether it just be name calling or even more extreme it's hard to prove if it's in the schoolyard or off the schoolyard. And they got parents too. I mean, like, I don't want to sound cruel or insensitive, but when, you know, someone's teen gets killed and then the killer is put in jail, the mother, the parents, my child is innocent. My child, my baby, how can you do this to my baby? Well, he just shot somebody. No, it's my, you know, and they got parents too, and they'll defend, and it's just, sometimes I guess it's better, easier, more convenient just to look the other way and let nature take its course. It's cruel, it's insensitive, and that's why I sincerely believe, in spite of all the education, it's like, don't smoke, right? You put the blackened lungs on the cigarette packages and stuff, and I smoked a lot. And when I saw that stuff, it was like, they actually sold covers to put over your cigarette packages so you didn't have to see that picture. And you continue smoking. Now teens they know everything. They know everything is going to happen. There's more smokers now than ever. Well, teen smokers, especially girls, which is really bad. So it's almost like the more, it's a rebellious sort of thing. The more you tell them not to, the more they're going to do it. And the education makes parents feel good. It's like toys for pets. The only people who really like toys, pets don't like toys for pets. People like toys for pets, you know, and the pet likes a box. You know?
I really like your comment though earlier on when you were speaking there, and you said you can't tell. There's nothing you can say to them that the kid's being bullied, other than it's going to get better at some point, because that's basically the message of my book. Like, that's why I write and create art for young people. I don't have a solution. I can barely keep my own life together. I'm not going to go to some teenager and be like, I know how it's all going to be perfect for you. I just write these stories that show young people that at least someone else has been there, that my characters and by proxy myself have been through these things that that the readers hopefully has been through. And I just want them, like, I don't have a solution. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how to make the bullies go away. I don't know if it's ignoring them, or I don't know if it's fighting them. And I present lots of different options in my books, and I don't have the answer. I just hope that some kid finds my book and reads it, and it just gives them enough to keep going another day or week or month. Because these are complex and difficult issues. And there aren't easy solutions. We can't go out and chop the head of the monsters in real life. So I create art about monsters that simply has a message that's like, just hang in there, guys. It's tough and it sucks. And it's not going to be easy and it's not fun. But my characters pulled through in the end, and I know you can pull through too. And you know, I think as artists, that's hopefully what we can give to the world. It's not answers, but just motivation to keep going through the really tough stuff that life throws at us.
And I think there's an advantage to writing YA fiction that deals with these issues, because you can't provide solutions. There aren't solutions for this. It's not an easy fix, but at least those kids who are reading it can feel like they're not alone. Exactly. And I think that's the thing. They go, okay, there's a character who's going through the same things. They may be having a really terrible time, but at least they're having the same terrible time that I am. So it's not just me. I can identify with something.
The bully is like a very common trope in all YA.
It is absolutely. And I was gonna say, there are like bullies in my book. It's not. People are not in high school. They might be young, but they're not in high school. They're going through like completely different things. But the vampires kind of act as bullies. Like, they're just coming in and taking over crap that, you know, people used to enjoy. And they're going through, they're in a place of huge pain and anger. And the message is exactly the same. It's going to suck, and then it gets better. It doesn't have anything to do with high school, but it really does.
But let's face it, there's bullies in the workplace too, right? I mean, bullying And monstrous behavior isn't just a high school issue or just a teen issue. Like, I work in the public service, I can tell you. There's bullies everywhere, and they, right?
Oh yeah, it's a social issue, absolutely, because as much as we take our pain and we, I think, are better people for it out of high school, well, the ones who did the bullying are just going to keep being the people that they were as well. And a lot of people, sometimes they realize what they've done, but I think that's the minority. And most of them are just going to keep doing what worked for them all through those years.
And then the onus is on the the person who's bullied to forgive them, or otherwise they're bad for not letting it go.
Exactly.
It's kind of part of our victim blaming social apparatus, right? Like the people who've been
And that's the thing. Like if
no.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm just saying, like, if people would actually, say to, to kids that have been bullied, what happened to you was actually wrong,
And it wasn't your fault. It wasn't
Exactly.
something that you did, and there was nothing wrong with you.
But instead, just well, you need to toughen up. It's your fault. You have a thin skin. It's you're the one who's bringing it on yourself. Well, and that's I think one of the most damaging things about bullies. Is just that it's just taken as being it's part of society, and the problem's in you. Suck it up.
We're kind of approaching the end, so I'm hoping we can open things up to the audience. Any questions that you have, or comments that you have about the monsters that you're reading about, or watching on film, or TV.
Give us questions now, or we'll come back
I
there.
have one.
Perfect.
You've talked a lot about vampires and werewolves and zombies, and those are the big popular ones these days. But I'm wondering if you had any thoughts about the lesser used monsters like sirens or banshees or things that aren't really popular right now,
Great question.
and how those could be.
I do find that we seem to be latching on to these monsters that we consider traditional, even though we're erasing tons of other monsters. And I think there's some great stuff coming out of some of these other monsters. I particularly like the Frankensteinian style monsters because there's something cool about the amalgam body, the body that is pieced together, and the wildness of science. Science gone to the extremes of creating life out of death, but also just piecing together little tiny bits.
Yeah.
And so I really like that figure for what it represents in terms of the sewn together body, the mosaic inside. What are some of your favorite kind of fringy monsters?
What was it in Cabin in the Woods? What was the merman?
Yes!
What was that?
That was awesome.
Oh, come on. And even there, it brings the question, who were the real monsters there? I mean, all of those, horror things were all kept prisoner until they were let loose. Sorry to spoil it for him. Sorry, but it is still a really cool movie.
I like the phobia monsters, the ones that preys on phobia, like arachnophobia. The giant spiders and the sharks in the tornado.
Panel's gone downhill fast. We're into merman and Sharknado now.
Sharknado. Yeah, I offered that up for Webster's word for the year. I don't think they're gonna take it. But yeah, I like because when you start going into the peripheral monsters, it's because the big guys have been used so much. So now you have the succubus. Is that what show is that? I can't remember.
Lost Girl.
Lost Girl, yes, and they're reaching for the smaller guys, but I like to morph. I like to morph the big guys again. Nothing's again with the spiders. So I'm like, well, what if vampires didn't just drink blood? What if they're like spiders?
Yeah.
And instead of they are kind of are. And what if instead of you see the dead guy, you see a brittle husk. All right, that's cool. That's pretty scary.
That's terrifying.
I'm fascinated by fairies, not the Tinkerbell fairies, but the fairies with an E. in the same way that I think most people are fascinated by vampires. You know, there's these like beautiful, attractive, really, really scary creatures that can like, you know, kidnap your children and replace them with things that you don't even know are things, and you know, attract you into their world and make you taste really, really tasty food that you can never eat anything else ever again. You know, kind of really psychologically pervert you in a way that they make you not you anymore. And then that's something that I'm fascinated by.
There's been some great fiction returning to real, like, scary ass fairies of history, because we've kind of got this tamed down Tinkerbell deal that is pervasive, but when you're looking at the actual myths, they're terrifying.
Oh yeah.
And their beauty is terrifying because it's an alluring, right? It pulls you into their world from which you can't escape.
Exactly.
I'm going to talk about aliens, because aliens are a good one in that they are like, you know, a canvas for whatever you're scared of. You know, there's been, you know, you could have them as basically a force of nature invading. You could have them being very much like fairies. There are people who think that fairies people saw might have actually been the aliens people say are abducting them now, and who knows? They're similar stories, and you know, you can do a lot with aliens, but again, it sort of comes down to being simply the other.
And even you're saying alien, but the alien monster from Aliens is an excellent monster because it goes and invades you, it plants a seed in you. I mean, like, and you know, then you got the whole I'm being eaten alive thing happening because the thing pops out and it's going to eat you. But I mean that, and then you try and kill it and it's got acid for blood.
Yeah.
I mean, like, come on.
That's not fair. Actually, there's a line from Aliens that I was reminded of earlier in the panel, and that's when, you know, Ripley is talking to Burke, the guy, the, you know, company guy, and so says, you know, Burke, I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them trying to screw each other over for a percentage. You know, there's the theme there. They're aliens. You know where you stand with the aliens. With a guy like Burke, he's much more monstrous because, you know, he's the guy who says, "Oh no, I'm your friend," and stabs you in the back and traps you in a room with face hunters.
Yeah.
It was Ash, wasn't it? Oh, Burke. Were we talking about the android guy?
No.
This is Alien.
This is Aliens. The guy.
No, but I mean the character who was the original Alien. Wasn't he Ash?
Ash was the
android.
The android,
Okay.
yes.
And Burke was.
Burke was the company man in the second movie. That was
you're on the second movie.
There was another android.
All right.
But no, it was innocent.
So just to kind of, as we're approaching the end, I'm wondering if you can talk about some of the really good, terrifying monster books that you've read recently, just to give kind of audience members a kind of a list of some truly terrifying tales.
I am not good with giving on the spot list.
Oh, sorry.
Recent or just favorites?
Favorites.
Well, I wrote a trilogy, and kind of the first book is horror, the second book is sci-fi, and the third book is fantasy, but they all kind of intermingle. Don't do that. It's not a way to sell a book. So I went back during the horror book and reread a bunch of horror stuff, and I've revisited Salem's Lot, Stephen King's book, and I don't know, I've read that 3 or 4 times now, and it blows me away every time. Especially, I grew up in a small town and hated it, and my book is about hating life in a small town. And I read a review where a reviewer was saying, Stephen King's Salem's Lot is so over the top, even the milkman has a dirty secret or whatever. And I was like, clearly this person's never lived in a small town, because the milkman does have a dirty secret. They all do in that small town. So that's just something I revisited that I really, really enjoyed.
Once I have a pretty sort of wide suspension of disbelief. It takes a lot to scare me. I was absolutely terrified during the Tyrannosaur scene in Jurassic Park, but otherwise, the raptors didn't scare me at all. A lot of things I'm able to sort of distance myself. But one story, and then the adaptation of it was a little Stephen King short story called The Raft. And it was about these 4 teenagers who drive up to this remote little lake, and they swim out to this raft, and they, as they're swimming, they see that there's this weird sort of oil slick on the water. They don't think much of it until it eats one of them. Like it sort of entrances them, and then they touch it, and it's basically like sticky acid. It just sort of pulls them in and dissolves them. And then these guys realize that they're trapped on this. Like it's not, it's going to catch them if they try to swim back to shore. And they didn't tell anyone where they were going. They realize that they're stuck there, and they've got to somehow find a way to, get around this thing. And if they don't, their death is going to be horrifyingly agonizing and painful. And yeah, that scared the crap out of me. That really sort of dug into my imagination there, because I couldn't think how I would get out of that kind of a situation. It's not like they could just, oh, good thing I brought this flamethrower. No, they were in swimsuits and that was it. And yeah, no, it's creating a situation where the reader can't actually figure out how how they would get out is one terrific way of doing something like that, especially if they. It's not simply, just, getting killed, but really painfully, slowly killed, like that. Oh.
Yeah, the one guy got sucked between the boards of the raft.
Ooh, yeah,
Anything by Stephen. It, great. The older you get, the harder it is to get scared. Because that's why horror movies are made for teens, because they haven't seen it all yet. They're seeing it all now more than you would like to admit. My 16-year-old daughter watches The Walking Dead. I would have, from the very beginning, I would have freaked when I was a kid watching it.
It looks like we're being kicked out.
Exorcist.
Yeah, but the last group was late, so I say we carry on the tradition.
Well, thank you very much. I want to thank all the representatives for their brilliant work.
Thank you for being here.